Before my Twitter account got banned yet again, and they've actually got me IP banned now, so rip, at least for a while, I tweeted a half-formed idea. It was something like, governments should be liberal, people should be conservative. Here's what I was trying to get at. We should all know, at this point, the layman's knowledge of how psychology and biology mediates left-wing and right-wing views. At least, you'll know if you watch my video on it. Certain personality types are more or less likely to be of a certain political persuasion, and those personality types are at least partially genetic. A person's politics doesn't have to change with age, but when it does change due to aging, it's more likely to shift rightward. Left-wing views are influenced by creativity, the desire for exploration and adventure, the view that change is generally good. Right-wing views are influenced by conscientiousness, the desire for mediation and stability, and the view that peace is generally good. The left invents, the right optimizes. Clearly, a functioning society and a functioning individual needs at least some of each of these qualities. Governments should be liberal because the government should be hands-off on people's liberties as they go through exploratory periods of their lives, discovering what works for them, whether or not that's orthodox. And people should be conservative because once they've discovered what works for them, they should adhere to a set of positive, habit-building behaviors that allows them to excel at whatever it is they've discovered. You can't really have this relationship work inversely. A government that is too conservative will not allow people to go on the necessary adventures of life, and will instead prescribe, with state force, an ever narrower morality upon them. But people who are too liberal, who value freedom too much, will never settle down. They'll never commit to whatever it is they need to commit to in order to get their life going. They'll never voluntarily enter into a hierarchy and diligently work at self-improvement. That's not to say that governments should be so liberal as to never prescribe anything ever in the name of infinite plurality, or that people should be so conservative that their piety paralyzes them. Everything can go overboard, and there's a correct balance to be struck here. But I do think the general idea, governments should be liberal, people should be conservative, works. It best represents the golden mean. In that video last week, where I responded off the cuff to one of Second Thought's videos, his take was basically describing the golden mean fallacy. By the way, I had no idea who Second Thought was, and I was surprised to see so many of you overjoyed that I was finally responding to him. I guess he's well known for being a brainlet or something. The golden mean fallacy, otherwise known as the argument to moderation or the false compromise, is the belief that the truth is always somewhere between two opposing positions. The common example given is when person A says the sky is blue and person B says the sky is yellow. The so-called truth would be that the sky is green, because green is actually the middle color between blue and yellow. Because the sky is actually blue, clearly appealing to the middle ground doesn't help us very much here. Second Thought's position is best summed up by this comic you see a lot of in lefty spaces online, where the cartoonist has positioned the two sides as being we want to kill black people and we want civil rights, with the centrist in the middle asking to compromise between the two factions. It's this view, plus the idea that compromise and stability is more of a conservative trait than a liberal one, is what makes leftoids commonly say stuff like centrism just means right-wing, or neither right nor left means right, or even more ridiculously, cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds. The leftist view on liberalism, or any other non-leftist ideology, or really any blend of leftism the leftist you're talking to doesn't adhere to except his own, is that it's necessarily a step on the road to being right-wing, and therefore is right-wing itself. Sometimes the language used to describe this is right-wing adjacent, though that term hit its peak in 2018. This view is where we get the leftist tendency to purity spiral. If you're not as left as possible, then you are necessarily a morally lesser being, because more left means more good. In this view, centrists can't be anything but evil rightoids, even if they don't believe in rightist ideas all that much, because they're compromising with the enemy. Here's the thing though, the extremists on the right do this too. How many times will a rightoid consider a liberal and a communist to be the same thing? How many rightoids will say stuff like, yeah, he's kinda lefty, but he's still alright, as if to imply the exact same thing, left bad, right good, where the left-right scale is also a morality scale, only now it works the other way around. The right even has its own variant of the phrase, cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds. You can often find in online right-wing spaces a disdain for centrists or moderates. Their belief is that the center is simply pegged to the Overton window, and that as the left drives the Overton window leftward, centrists will also drift more leftward in order to keep that title of centrism, because it sounds moderate, reasonable, and enlightened. Because of that emotional connection to the label of center, centrists, and even sometimes establishment conservatives will naturally adopt previously unthinkable leftist positions. The natural end result of this logic is that centrism, and even liberalism to an extent, is a political belief in nothing at all, beyond whatever those in power can impose onto the society of the day as the normal. But in this view, there is no real normal. There is no real center. Nobody has any principles, and it's all simply the acquisition and application of raw power. This view is not only retarded, but it's provably false. The entirety of the left left me behind, or the how I left the left trend of the late 2010s shows that people do not simply attach themselves to political labels and mindlessly absorb whatever positions those labels now represent. In fact, people are much more likely to abandon political labels and stick to those positions they feel are correct, while decrying that their old political camp has changed. That's why comics like this resonate with so many politically homeless people. The Overton window shifted, but they didn't. Hell, I was even considered on the left 10 years ago, and now you can't find an actual leftist who would ever take me. If I was personally more emotionally attached to a political label, more than I am attached to the political positions that I believe to be correct, why did I move from calling myself left to center-left to center as the world around me changed over the years? The truth is, I don't care about the political compass. If, in a decade, my current positions are considered far-right, then I will happily be a far-rightist. The main reason that I call myself a centrist is because I get an equal amount of hate from both sides, and it's actually pretty funny. BreadTube and LeftyTube calls me a libertarian, a fascist, a rightoid, a conservative, a reactionary. But those groups don't actually claim me. Far from it. Those guys call me a leftist, a socialist, a communist, a progressive, a liberal, a soy boy cuck. Both extremes view the centrist as simply being the useful idiot of their enemies. I don't actually have any commitment to the centrist label. Like I said, if I'm left-wing at one point in time and right-wing at a separate point in time, that's fine by me. I don't care. I have a certain set of morals that have been solidly anchored in place due to my own unique life experiences, and my policy prescriptions flow down from those morals. They don't shift in the wind, dependent on what a YouTuber or a pundit says, or what a political compass test calibrates me as, or what's currently popular, or what my friends or viewers or haters think of me. Now, that's not to say that I never change my opinion. Of course I do. Everyone does to some extent. You take in new evidence, you change your opinion. That's pretty normal. But when my view changes, it's in line with my morals. The evidence will tell me something new about the world, but my morals will tell me what in the evidence that I should value, and how that affects my politics. What differentiates me from my political opponents on either side is not that I'm not on their team and therefore I will always be a traitor to them. I can't be trusted, though they might think that. It's not even that I'm a moderate and that they're a radical, though that's getting closer. It's that we think in a fundamentally different way. Anarcho-communists are utopians who hate the private sphere. Anarcho-capitalists are utopians who hate the public sphere. They ultimately hold the exact same moral intuitions. The aim of their ire is simply toward two different institutions. And this works on the authoritarian side too. People switch between international socialism and national socialism simply by switching what YouTuber they watch nowadays. Their way of thinking hasn't changed, they're simply playing for a different team. It's the exact same thing with a leftoid saying cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds, and a rightoid saying liberalism always degrades into communism. They're both wrong in the end, and they're both blind to their own utopian excesses and biases. The libertarian who screams about the very real dangers of government power while ignoring corporate mistreatment of employees who don't have an opportunity to quit because it's the free market, those people don't need to be listened to. Same thing with the socialist, who thinks overthrowing democracy will lead to a worker's paradise, while never having done an honest day's work in his life. Or the incel, who blames all of his problems on hypergamy and biological determinism, when his grotesque ass hasn't showered in a month and all he consumes is red pill podcasts. Or the vegan, whose arms have wasted away from excessive soy consumption, being pro-PETA, despite PETA killing more animals than anyone else. Or the prog, who thinks that getting really high once makes him qualified to organize society by an ideology he's literally never thought through once and is simply what his professor shoveled into his brain. These people are all retarded. Populism is an important component of politics. It's the outsider who brings new ideas into the mainstream to be considered, weighed on their merits, and then implemented or discarded. Libertarians, socialists, and other outsiders are the reforming force of society, meant to critique the liberal conservative institutions. If outsider ideas are gaining traction, that's an alarm bell that things need to be reformed somehow. Something's going wrong with the system. But populism should not become the mainstream, because at that point it shifts from being a reforming force to a revolutionary one. For example, socialist prescriptions are garbage on like every possible level, but still, a socialist is not wrong when he says that society destabilizes if too much wealth is at the top and the common person feels like they don't even have a chance to get ahead on their hard work anymore. That might be a true criticism, but that is a problem that liberal society has fixes for. We don't need socialism to tackle that. The socialist serves well as the canary in the coal mine and nothing else. That's why I'm a moderate, a centrist, a very normal, kinda liberal, kinda conservative type of guy. Not because I'm a hidden commie, or I'm a hidden reactionary, or whatever the fuck, but because I recognize that while the free market creates abundance, it also does next to nothing for those who fall between the cracks. I recognize that bigotry is bad, not because of wrongthink or some grand political project, but because it interferes with people's liberties. And when bigotry doesn't interfere with people's liberties, like if it's just random speech, then who cares? I recognize that the state has a legitimate role in protecting the rights of citizens from bad actors, which means a police force, and an army, and a legal system. And anarchists can cope all they want about it because they'd recreate all that shit and just not call it a state. I recognize that things like patriotism or masculinity isn't toxic. It's a natural consequence of loving your home, your family, yourself, and the things that are nostalgic and familiar to you. And that doesn't make you a fascist. These are all very normal liberal conservative values, nothing too crazy here. If you think that I am exactly like your ideological opposite because I disagree with you, even though I disagree with them, you're literally just a direction brain. Your mind is so brain rotted by ideology that you're rigidly adhering to a theoretical view of politics and ignoring its practical effects. And yes, there are absolutely people like this in my comments. There's people saying that all I do is shit on the left and I'm clearly just a rightoid and I need to stop hiding it. And then there are other people who say that, oh my god, Deb's criticizing the right again. Oh, I didn't think he was actually a liberal. And in both cases, these people are fucking stupid. They both suffer from confirmation bias. They believe that I'm uniquely picking on the right or the left and ignoring the right or the left, whichever one of those combinations works for them. But it's just not true. In fact, I do genuinely criticize the left on this channel more than the right, but I also know that the right is going to be so much more angry in the comments whenever I do criticize them. Every single time I post a video that critiques the right or makes fun of the right, a bunch of people get angry. And they go, oh my god, L, you fell off ratio. But I'm not right-wing. And frankly, the amount of anger is disproportionate to the amount of times I've criticized the right. Just so that we have some actual data on this, I went over a bunch of my recent videos. And let's tally it up. The pronouns problem is a video that is squarely against the left. Hearing both sides is good, actually. Applies to both, but it's against the left in this specific situation, so it's like 0.5 against the left. Non-fungible trumps is making fun of the right. COVID amnesty is making fun of the left. Merry Turfmas is making fun of the left. Best I can do is kill ya is kinda making fun of the left, another 0.5. Low IQ Twitter discourse is making fun of the left. Brinton's baggage is making fun of the left. The Paul Pelosi attack video is making fun of both. The Bill Clinton awards kid is making fun of neither. Jordan Peterson versus Anonymous is kinda making fun of the right. Balenciaga Blues is against the left. LGBT Qatar is kinda against both. A criticism of gay marriage is kind of against the left, though I'm still ultimately pro-gay marriage. The horocracy is definitely against the left. It's DeSantis, not Trump, is kinda against the right, though it's more specifically against the MAGA movement. The Bayonetta review and the talk with Not So Erudite and Stardust, they don't really count as anything. The first video on Canada's euthanasian laws is also kind of against the left. I Hate TikTok is also like a little bit against the left, but not really, it's just kind of a goofy video. Martha's Migrants goes after both sides, but it's more against the right than the left, I think, so that'll be like half of a point for the right. G4 Gets the Door, I guess that's kind of against the left, but it's more about G4, you know? The rise and fall of Google Stadia doesn't really count in this. Are trans women actually women? That also doesn't really count in this, though it's very broadly against the left's point of view, but again, it's its own thing. The 3 forms of fascism is again its own thing, it's an educational video. Don't Botox your booty, that is broadly against the left. Chuds of TikTok is a video critical of the right. In Defense of Kiwi Farms is a video that is broadly critical of the left. The Forever Game is not critical of anyone. Why Do Socialists Hate Charity is critical of the left. The MAGA Republicans video is critical of the right. Quiet Quitting is critical of the left. The Pride Flag problem is critical of the left. The No Hate Watching video seems to be just its own thing. The hatred of small businesses is critical of the left. Hollow representation is critical of the left. Paying off the student loans video, that's a video critical of the left. How I Do Research is critical of both the right and the left. Saints Row is a dumpster fire doesn't seem to apply. Everyone's Gay for Bridget is definitely critical of the left. My audience capture video is critical of the right. How far back do you want me to go? Look at these numbers. I criticize the left so much more on this channel, not because I'm right-wing, but because the left currently has more that is critical about it. I am not a partisan rightoid. I'm not a reactionary or a neo-reactionary. I'm not a hardcore libertarian or a conservative, though I do recognize that those camps do have some value. But I'm also not a progressive. I'm not a socialist. I am a very moderate liberal. Always have been, always will be. And that doesn't mean that I'm ideological. Sometimes you need to take note of what's actually working, even if it's outside of your specific political wheelhouse. If a good idea actually works, and you're against it because that's what the other team wants, then you're putting theory before reality. You're a part of the problem. The point that I'm getting at is that I am not explicitly a right-winger or a left-winger. If you are a partisan, I'm not on your side. And if you're so tribalistic that hearing that makes you not want to watch me, then fine. The people in my community should be made of stronger stuff than that. Hopefully, this video puts that conversation to bed. I will continue to dunk on the right just like I dunk on the left, because I like to do it. And if you're watching me, that means you're here for it. Get used to it.